Hello and welcome back to another episode of Winging It, the official WUSA podcast where we talk about student stories on the fly. My name is Johann and my co-host.
I'm Ria.
And today we have two very special guests, if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Thank you for having us on. So my name is Rory Norris. I'm the current president here at WUSA. Pronouns are he, him. I'm in my 1B year of study, and I'm currently studying biotechnology and accounting here at Waterloo.
Thank you for having us. My name is Kate Traynor. Pronouns are she, her. I just finished second year and I was in planning under the Faculty of Environment.
You guys are studying really interesting things. So BioTech and Accounting.
BioTech and Accounting, yeah. It's a very small program offered here at the University of Waterloo. It's very strange to find people who are sort of into both aspects of the field. The problem that they've been dealing with historically is that by the time they get to their fourth year, like half the classes switched into either full-time accounting or full-time biology. So we started this year with, I think, something like 30 to 35 students, and we've already fallen down to 20 students we're at it as of my last count.
How are you liking it?
I think it's amazing. It gets both my skills that I loved in high school, and that's one of the reasons I came here to Waterloo is because they offered that program.
That's amazing.
Yeah. In environmental studies?
Yeah, it's planning.
Environmental planning. So what does that mean?
So planning under the Faculty of Environment, in my mind, is designing cities. So there's lots of specializations. You can look at policy through the provincial, federal, or municipal government. You can do land management. You can do urban design. I'd like to think of it as a way of connecting all the things that we have to live within a city together. So that's how I'd describe it.
Oh, so what do you want to do with environmental planning? I think the most planning I've done is, have you ever played SimCity? That's the most I've done. And I think I've reached maybe level 14, and then they wanted too much lighting and water. And I was like, I cannot play this game anymore. It's too much thinking.
I think for me it was Farmville on Facebook, but yes.
Exactly like that though. I played lots of Sims and City Builder or just lots of city games too. But for the past 2 years, I've been trying to pursue urban design specialization within planning, but I've also been doing a minor in law. So I like legal studies, and then I also really appreciate design and aspects of design. So hopefully after I graduate from planning, I can also do urban design or architecture, something like that.
So how did you learn about WUSA then? And where did WUSA come into play?
So I guess I can start off there. So I had sort of always been involved in student government going back to my time in high school. I was always involved with my student council with the running of things, and then eventually I got into sort of the higher level positions there. And so when I came to university, WUSA was sort of that next step, so to say. And so my first year, my initial plans were actually just to sort of sit in the back, watch how things are playing out, and then eventually in future years, jump in.
You're obviously not sitting in the back right now.
I think the reason that sort of happened was my friend he jumped in right away to get involved in Musa. So he was sitting on some of the committees last year. And so he sort of, introduced me to everything. It was like, hey, if you're interested, you should just go ahead and run for president. We haven't had anyone, apply yet. And I think that you would be a really good candidate. So he really encouraged and pushed me to go out and get the 100 signatures needed to be able to run.
That is amazing. And also in your first year, right? We don't hear about that very often. So that's really commendable. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it was a little bit of luck as well, because when I finally decided that, yes, I was going to go and run, it was the day of the big snowstorm last year. So all the classes were canceled.
Oh, okay.
And so luckily I was in residence just at V1. And so I was able to go around and talk with people. And a bunch of people were just sort of hanging out in the cafeteria area, the general area, just having fun. And I was able to go and meet with a bunch of people and talk to them and get those signatures that I needed.
Nice. So how was the campaign for you then?
The campaign was, was pretty good. I think the big thing was meeting with a lot of students and seeing what their concerns were. One of the big concerns I heard from a lot of students was that they themselves didn't really know what WUSA did. And I think that's, one of the big problems we hear from a lot of students is that they don't really know what WUSA does on their behalf or what, is available to them that WUSA offers. And so that was one of the things that coming in here, I'm looking to change over the course of the year. We'll see how much, progress I'm able to make, but it's been going well so far.
How would you both explain what WUSA's role is in student life?
That's a good question. I think the big piece that we play is in advocacy role, we advocate both to the university and then also to external bodies, mainly, the governments around here. I think that the big thing that maybe a lot of students don't see is we're constantly in talks with the university about, what they're doing and what the university is working on and giving that student perspective to things. Obviously, in recent times, the university is going to be reaching out to a lot of students with regards to what they are thinking and how they can change for the future. It's not something that's really that interesting or exciting, but it's something that we're currently, always working on. Besides that, obviously, we have our ongoing operations, which includes our student-run services, and then also our, full-time operations like at FlockStop. And so making sure that those are run, smoothly and efficiently at all times is something that we always like to keep an eye on, but we usually leave to our full-time staff to do, and then they report back to us as board. And then maybe Katie can speak to more what our advocacy is looking like externally to the governments.
Yeah. So in terms of advocacy, we primarily, I guess you could say, focus on 4 levels. So the first one I'll probably identify is advocacy municipally, so within the region of Waterloo. So usually we sit on different committees or a town and gown, and we connect with ward councillors and the mayor and discuss important issues related to, let's say, student wellness, housing, student accommodations. On the second level, we would probably have a federal lobbying and advocacy. So in terms of that, we're a part of UCRU, UCRU. Not that many people know of it, but technically it's what we are a part of as WUSA for our federal advocacy. And it stands for Undergraduates of Research Intensive Universities, because the University of Waterloo is a research intensive university. So within that, we have 9 members, and we focus on a variety of different federal lobbying goals and priorities. On the third level, I would say we'd have provincial. So that is going to the provincial government through WUSA, which is the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance. And that one also has 8 members. And collectively, we represent around 160,000 students collectively. And a big part of that is writing or constructing policies regarding accessibility, affordability, and quality post-secondary education at post-secondary institutes. So that is kind of the third level of advocacy. And the fourth level, of course, is one of the most important, and that's advocacy internally in what we do and what message we spread around campus and to students. So hopefully that summarizes it.
So you guys are really involved in a lot of things then, from what I'm hearing. And you've also been involved in WUSA as well. WUSA? Is that how you would say it? O-U-S-A?
WUSA?
WUSA?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm saying it right. Okay. Yeah, so what exactly do they do?
So for WUSA, what I'm involved in is I'm the VP HR and admin this year. And essentially what we do is really do our best to conduct research on what students want to see on campus. So this year we're looking at 3 policy papers. The first ones that will come up include student health and wellness, rural and northern students, housing, transit, and community development. And inside of these papers, you'll find PCRs, which is a principle, a concern, and recommendation. The principle being what is the issue, the concern outlining essentially what that issue is. Sorry, I think I messed that up. The principle being what is the key aspect of what students need, the concern being why it's a problem or what challenges or barriers exist, and recommendation to different ministries on the provincial level of how this can be alleviated or changed to better equip students with quality post-secondary education. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. I'd say it does.
That actually reminded me that we recently had the GRT strike as well that happened. And what was the role that you had to play with WUSA and combating that, and even just informing students about what is going on and what can students do, what should students expect?
Yeah, so just with the GRT strike, that was a very interesting situation because the strike actually occurred the day that I got into office. So it was like a nice surprise when I got in. They were like, happy, congratulations on the office. Also, there's a strike going on. So obviously we were playing that piece and where we had to increase the communication between the students, just letting them know that, hey, this strike is going on. Luckily for us, it was sort of the transition week between the 2 terms. So that first week of the strike didn't have as big as an effect on the students as it could have had if we were in class during that time. But then sadly, yeah, those 3 or 4 days at the start of the next week really did have an effect on students. So the big thing that we served as WUSA, then also working with GSA, was really reaching out to the organization of the GRTs. How are you going to provide for these students? When's the strike going to end? Like just keeping up that pressure, making sure that they get back to the table and resolve the strike. And then I heard a lot of concerns after the strike ended with students wondering if they were going to get refunds for the period of time that the GRT gave the free service to the general public. This is something that we continue to push for with GRT, but it's the kind of thing that just looking at now, it's not looking like it's going to be something that's going to happen. Basically, GRT has brought in the lawyers and they've pointed at the contract and say, hey, this isn't a clause in the contract. We're not giving you any money back. So it's the kind of thing that we're going to keep pushing for it. And when we go into renegotiation for the contract, which is going to happen in 2025, we're going to really stick to this point that, hey, you really put down your members, when you decided to make this decision, because I think something like 1/4 of all of GRT revenue comes from the plans that are made with agreement with ourselves, Laurier, and then also Conestoga. So it's this kind of thing that they really should be serving us when we ask for these things, and that the fact that they didn't just goes to show that, sometimes it doesn't work out in students' favor, and it shows that even if it doesn't, we're still here to push for that.
How was it like dealing with that right off the bat?
That was, again, just getting right into the first day. It was quite a surprise. We luckily had gotten information a week ahead of time that the strike was likely to go ahead. So we weren't completely in the dark. It was kind of interesting because when the strike was announced, we were contacted by some of the local news and radio stations. So sort of the very first day that I was in office, I was also on the local news and radio, just sort of talking about the students' perspective and how they're seeing this strike. So I think it was sort of getting back to that old adage that, you get thrown in and, it's sink or swim. So luckily, I think I was able to swim, and we got a very good response back, and fairly happy with it.
Yeah, that's great.
Rory holding the organization together.
Yeah. And how was it for you, like going into this and dealing with the strike?
It's really ironic in the sense that when it comes to advocacy and responses to stuff regarding GRT or transit, it technically would have fallen to me. But I think Rory saved me actually and handled the situation really well. Overall, my first week in the office was really nice. I got to meet many staff members and really start to understand what exactly we were doing for the year. Because I think that's a big thing once we transition on the 1st of May. After saying goodbye to Steph in Denver, we have to open our eyes and see, whoa, we're in this huge organization. We have to do our best for students. So that realization dawned on me really early. So now I'm going day by day and month by month trying to do my best for that.
That's great. And I feel like dealing with such a big issue right off the bat also helps, build your partnership together as well, because you guys do have a very close relationship when it comes to being president and vice president, right? So I think it's kind of forcing you guys to get to know each other on a deeper level to fix an issue that you need to work on together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And we also have the special general meeting coming up on 11 July.
What makes it so special?
Yeah.
I think that sometimes too.
Yeah. Nothing too special. I think it's more just, operational things that need to happen at this meeting. I think the big thing is that the audited accounts, so the financial information from the previous year, has finally been completed by our auditors. So they have gotten back to us and said, yep, this is all complete. So it just needs to be presented to a general body. And so in order to be presented, you need to first reach quorum, which I think is 100 students.
Okay.
And so,
how many students do you have right now?
To be determined.
That is to be determined, yeah.
On the day.
On the day, okay, surprise.
So yeah, we're really encouraging students to either try and show up in person if they can, because obviously it's important that they get involved in things like that. But if they can't, there's also proxy forms online now that they can fill out and give their recommendations for how they would vote if they were in person.
Could you talk a bit more about what the proxy forms are, just for those that aren't aware of what they are yet?
So as a member of an organization, as a member of WUSA, you have the right to vote in any of the special meetings and also in the election. So when it comes to the special meetings, if you aren't able to attend in person, you're basically giving your one vote, you're transferring it over to someone who will act in your place. You'll basically say, you'll go look through the agenda and say, okay, I'm going to vote yes for this, I'm going to vote no for this. And you can go through and sort of make those decisions without having to be there in person. and it sort of allows you to let your voice be heard without having to actually show up in person. Let's say if you have class or if you have other plans for that date.
And this is all happening in real time as well?
So nope. So the proxy form gets filled out ahead of time, and then it gets essentially handed over to someone who will act in your stead. So they'll make sure that your vote gets cast the way that you want it to.
Okay, that's cool.
And what happens in board meetings? What do you all discuss? And I think it's also streamed on YouTube. So students have access to that after. I think it's live and it's also recorded and just put on YouTube. So if we could delve a little into that.
Yeah, no problem. So board meetings happen currently every 2 weeks, Wednesday night at usually around 6 o'clock. And so, so they are streamed on YouTube. And then they're also available online after the fact. It's myself plus Katie and then 11 other board members who are on this board. And so we sort of make those high level decisions for the organization, sort of like how we want to see it going forward. So this is where we might hear concerns for a student. Let's say that, they're really not understanding what WUSA is and what services and stuff it provides. And so that'll make its way up to board, and then we can make sort of a decision on, how going forward can we better incorporate ourselves or let students know that we are out there and the things that we provide to students. This is also a little bit of confusion. We often hear from some students is that they might have a comment or concern that they want board to hear, but it's not really something that maybe board should discuss. Like, for example, let's say you went to Flockstop one day and you got a coffee or a drink, and the coffee or drink was, wasn't the right temperature for you. That's probably not something that board should be, discussing or talking about. That's something that's probably better discussed among the staff there at Flockstop. But, we would love to hear any other concerns that you have more for the organization in general, like things that you'd want to see changed or improve upon. Right now, besides, the recent situation that's been going on, a lot of our discussion has centered around the CEE, the change in the renege policy. So for those who aren't aware, their CEE, which is the co-op through Waterloo, is changing their policy for their renege. So traditionally how it would work out is that after you've accepted a job at, through Waterloo Works, if you reneged on that policy or reneged on that contract, essentially saying that you weren't going to show up for that job, then you'd be barred from Waterloo Works for 2 semesters, but you'd still able to get a co-op credit in other ways. You just have to find your own job. But with this new recent policy change, they basically said that if you renege, not only are you going to not have access to that platform Waterloo Works, but also you're ineligible to get a co-op credit for that 1 4-month semester time. And so this is something that we're hearing from a lot of students is going to have negative consequences. And so we're really trying to push back CE and working sort of with our university partners to see if we can come to a more amicable solution.
Wow, seems like you guys are really busy this term. Are you both in school right now then?
So with our positions, you have to take that year off because it is considered a full-time job.
It does sound like a full-time job.
I know,
I'm hearing
right?
all
It's
your initiatives. I'm like, wow,
doing all
if you
these
guys
things.
are balancing this and school, you're on a different level. But
Yeah.
it sounds more reasonable.
But with that, you also have the opportunity to use that full-time job status as co-op opportunities. So I think of the 1 year, you're allowed to use 2 of those things as co-ops. So with that, I guess I'm also in, regular PD classes while I'm trying to do this. But yeah, those have been going well. I don't know if Katie, you have anything else to add?
I think Rory is saving everyone from me talking when I have a cold, so I think Rory covered it really well though. But something that I really love working within Musa is that they do provide us a tuition benefit in case we do want to pursue studies. So for instance, I made the choice to kind of abandon my cohort and study for the year, even though this is technically my first co-op term too.
Okay. Are you in your second year? Third year?
Second year. Planning is a little bit weird. Don't tell my faculty team that. Don't tell the school planning that. But we only have co-op in our second year in the spring. So this was my first co-op too. So I'm doing PD courses as well. But I think that regardless of whether we are working or we're studying, just connecting with students and being around students is something that's really important and valuable with what we do. So that's my conclusion to what Rory said.
I actually had a question. So WUSA plays such an integral role in our university life, right? Be it events, be it job opportunities. And what does WUSA's role look like when it comes to things like campus safety, for example.
What a very poignant topic to discuss right now. So I think we can just sort of go ahead and talk about that. I think this is something that we're going to be working with the university going forward, where you're going to be sort of in that room, sort of giving the student perspective on, what it's like and what are some of the changes that should be made to better provide for the students. Obviously, this, past event that happened, last week was sort of a very sad tragedy, and, the university should have taken steps beforehand to prevent it. And I think going forward, there are many things that need to change to be able to better, provide for students. One student sent me over the safety instructions for the MIT University down in the United States, and it had a long list of like 20 or 30 ways that they try and reach out with students, including things like text message, voicemail, the automatic, I think it's called like an AMS system, which is very similar to what we use here for like the Amber Alerts. And it's all these different ways that the university will reach out to you if there's a situation on campus, where it seems here at Waterloo, the only really ways they try and reach out to students are, through the Twitter and then also the app, which sadly failed in this.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I was just going to ask you actually that we also received an email this morning. What are your thoughts on that email? I don't know if you got the chance to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I took a look at that email from Vivek. It outlines sort of the next step I think that the university is going to take when it comes to looking at their policies and procedures. Obviously, that's a good thing. I think it's come a little late for many students, as they feel like this is something that probably should have been communicated a lot earlier, especially closer to the event. It's kind of sad that we had sort of the long weekend, which delayed the information a little longer than I think it should have. I would still try and push him a little farther, because I think a lot of the language he uses, again, sort of that bureaucratic, very like, this is how it's going to be, and not sort of feeling for the emotions and the impact that this event has had on many students throughout the campus. And I would continue to push for an even greater, review of the policies and procedures, because I think even if we go back, a year before this incident, there was another incident which occurred, and, this review policy or review should have happened then. And the fact that it, has taken another year and another incident for them to finally potentially look at their policies is, it's very saddening to me.
What are WUSA's commitments, short-term, long-term, when it comes to something as serious as this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think probably Katie can speak more to what our goals are going forward, but this is something that we've had discussions about very recently, about how or what is WUSA's role in regards to this, and how can we be better prepared for the future?
I would just say, responding to the previous question as well before going back to this, as someone who identifies with the 2 LGBTQ plus community, it's just very saddening, like Rory mentioned, to feel this vulnerable on a campus where we're meant to feel safe, included, and welcomed. And the fact that it was a hate-motivated attack just really points out the fact that we as students are very vulnerable to stuff that happens on campus, and also staff and faculty members. And it really is the university's responsibility to do better, not only for us, but everyone who is attending this post-secondary institute, whether it be now or into the future. So hopefully we'll get to see that response be acted out with efficient action by the university soon. In terms of short-term responses that we're trying to commit to at WUSA, the first would be connecting with the provost and connecting with the university, finding a way to hold them accountable or touch base with them to ensure that the stuff that, let's say, Vivek has outlined in his email is fully, I guess you could say, completed within a reasonable time frame, so it can give students a sense of comfort when they're living in such discomfort already on campus with the recent attack. The second thing is connecting with students, hearing their concerns, sending out a survey so we understand their concerns pertaining to our operations, our services, our clubs, and what we're doing on campus, because a lot of what we do is centered around SLC, and making sure that our operations and what we provide to students is also safe is essential to make sure students feel included and inclusive within our own spaces at WUSA. Another thing is inquiring about the safety for students on campus. So that's going back to the university and also connecting with other stakeholders and making sure that their voices are heard. In the long term, we really want to provide support to students in whatever format that we can do, so that leads to more investigation of our operations and spaces, ongoing research and conversations, and that will likely be mapped out very soon. Hopefully we can get something more concrete, but a lot of it is connecting with, let's say, maybe the mayor or the ward council. Oh my goodness, I feel a cough or a sneeze coming. Connecting with the counselors and connecting with the university and creating a forum for students to ask questions. So there is a way not only to hold the university accountable, but find ways to secure funding to increase our student wellness supports, to increase the safety of our students on campus, and many more things. And only time will tell, sadly, what that will really look like. But moving forward, I believe the sentiment at WUSA is that we want to support all students. We want to support all of our services and staff. And that also looks at connecting with the GLOW Center, the Women's Center, making sure that a lot of our marginalized groups on campus feel like they can be supported in whatever academic environment that they're situated in. So hopefully that answers that question too.
I'd say you guys also gave a really fast and rapid response to it. When I believe you were the first that posted about the events as well. Is that correct? Because you guys made on the WUSA website that we have, you guys made a statement, and I think that was really well done on your part.
I don't think we were the first statement that came out, sadly. I think that other universities even came out with statements faster than our own. I believe actually the first statement that came out was from Rory. It came out the day after the event occurred. Ours also came out the same day, but it came out, I think, later in the day. And then the university kind of sent their statement out that day as well, but it was that was a statement that came from James Rush, which was, again, sort of that bureaucratic speak, a lot of, this is what happened, more facts-based. And I think a lot of students would have preferred that more emotional side of, like, how can we support you in this time? These are the ways we're going to change going forward. And so that's what I would probably say to that. Obviously, we've put our statement out in there, and I think that this is just us showing to students that we're against what took place. And again, that it was a horrible event which occurred, and that we don't want to see something like that happening again. And then obviously last week there was also the Arts Quad, I want to call it like a press briefing that the president held. So for those students who weren't able to attend, I also spoke a few words at that, in which we repeated sort of the same sort of thing that we're discussing here, along the lines of, how bad of a situation it is and the need for change in the future to be able to prevent such a thing from occurring again.
In a situation like this, what should students expect, or what is there something students can do?
Let me clarify that question then. Are you asking what are we expecting students to do if they find themselves in a situation like this, or after the fact, do you mean?
Just after this incident, what can students do to create an environment where they feel more safe, more comfortable? I know WUSA is doing their part, but is there something that students can do to help WUSA?
Yeah, I think that the best thing for students to do would just sort of be to reach out to each other. Often in times of crisis, our best support system are those around us. So I'd say, connect with your friends, see how they're doing mentally, if they, need any support or things like that. I would also say, you can look into connecting with other, services around the university. I would say that when it comes to how this can best be prevented in the future, I don't really see that as something that the students can do, sadly. I think that's, again, mostly a university policy thing that they're really going to have to look at. And then also, we're going to have to maybe look at sort of the culture of Waterloo, like what has caused, a student to come to the University of Waterloo and sort of feel and think that way. So I'd want to see sort of those two things being looked into. Katie, I'm not sure if you have something.
Just to add on to that, I think a really big part of the attack that took place on campus is that as students, we also have a duty to stay informed and stay up to date and not jump to conclusions or make assumptions about the situation. And the reason why I say that is because in very sensitive moments like these, in this time, we have to act as each other's allies and supporters, like Rory mentioned. And in order to do that, we have to wait to hear as more information comes out as well. So I would say that's a really big part or role that students can play. But I think all in all, I was really impressed by the rally that also occurred at Hagey Hall, and seeing the number of students who also attended the rally and gathering set up by the university, and seeing that support, seeing that students care and want to be involved in developing that sense of community, which we have almost lost on campus, is really inspirational. So that's what I would say to that as well.
Yeah, you attended that, didn't you?
I did.
There were a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had goosebumps when I was there. And I don't think a lot of people really fully processed what happened as well. I don't think a lot of people have still fully processed what happened. Even when
It's so unexpected.
Even when I talk about it, right? I was in Hagey Hall like last week, 2 weeks ago. My friend works there, so it's really bizarre to think that something like this happened in a place that we've had classes at.
No, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go because I wasn't in Waterloo at that time. But yeah, it's a very tragic thing to hear about, and hearing it go all over the news, and there was a student that also had an interview, and just hearing the student perspective of someone that was actually in that room, in that classroom, that saw everything go down. Yeah.
It's not something you really hear about in Canada, I would say.
No.
It's again, I think that's why it sort of made the national and international news, was this is probably a story more, you'd think to happen in the States, where they have a longer history of school shooting and school violence. I think that's sort of been the really shocking part.
I think that's also why it feels like we were so ill prepared for it too, because it's so unexpected. And yeah, I don't think our response to it was definitely not fast enough. I think how long did it take for the...
It took 90 minutes for the notification to be sent out. But with the system, if a notification gets sent out past a certain period of time, it immediately gets like archived or something. So it doesn't send like a notification. So it might have sent out the message, but it didn't get a notification. And then also not every student has the app. So
yeah, this is the...
What's safe?
Pardon?
What's safe?
Oh, I don't even know what that app is.
So that's the app where the university sends out all of their safety notification issues. I know it was initially really used during the COVID era, when sort of the regulations were changing day to day. I know we're past it already. Are we? I don't know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. It'll just be on forever. The COVID era. It's the whole decade. But anyway, I know a lot of students nowadays just don't have the app. So it's another thing. Like, if this is your one form of communication to get in contact with students, why don't all students have it? And it's something that, like, when I talk to most students, the way that they got informed was through Reddit, which, it shows a lot, and it's very saddening that there aren't other ways for the university to get in contact with students, because I think they should have that information on file somewhere. But
definitely. It's crazy because I know of the app, but I don't have it. I don't use it. So what you said makes complete sense, because if that is the primary way of getting in contact with students, I mean, not a lot of people have it. So
I didn't even know it existed.
Exactly, and that's
so where would we see these resources? Is it on the WUSA website that we could see that these apps are available to us?
Well, I think this app is mainly through the university, and so they do all the operation and stuff like that. So I don't believe it's on our website, but I think the university probably should do a better job of marketing this app, if that's sort of the one app that they are going to use to get in contact with them. I'd prefer that they use other methods, probably like texting and emailing, making sure that all students become aware of it. But again, I don't even know where the university has been posting this information, but that's just sort of how I learned about the app, was sort of through this whole situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get this app. Or they need to update the system as well.
And I think another problem was that they were testing the app in the morning. Right, so they sent out a test notification in the morning, just being like, oh, this is a test. And then when the actual situation occurred, they weren't able to get that notification out for, again, like we said, 90 minutes.
Was the test successful in the morning?
The test was successful in the morning, but then the actual, when they needed to use it, failed. So,
interesting.
again, just
Maybe
a lot
this
of
is
problems.
coincidence or
I don't think it's a coincidence, but I think like this looks really bad probably for the university to like be testing it and it'll all work out. And then like minutes later when they actually need it, it doesn't work. Like something is seriously wrong in that case that happened. And I know a lot of students are sort of very upset with it. I've seen a lot of posters up around campus. I'm not sure if you guys have seen, just sort of talking about the situation that went down.
really?
Yeah, I think the title is them as Watt Unsafe.
I saw that
You
this
saw that one
morning.
too? Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
a lot of students again are very unhappy, and that's why I would push for like other forms of getting in contact with students over the app. But if they're going to continue to use the app, I would say better marketing, making sure that all students have it downloaded.
So does something like this get incorporated in the annual plan? The situation, and then does the annual, are those things that you discuss with the university then?
So I'm not sure if this is something that's going to be instituted inside the annual plan, because the annual plan was sort of set up beforehand with the, sort of our long range goals for this year, and that's probably some of the more broader goals with regards to like how do we want to improve student engagement and things like that. This is something that's sort of popped up, and it's definitely something that we're going to be working on over the coming year. But I think it's sort of going to be separate from the annual plan. Probably it'll be another sort of separate document that gets drafted, and it'll also go to board to get approved. But I think that the big thing that we're going to be working on is with the university, making sure that they actually go through and review these policies and really pushing them to do better with regards to the situation.
So when is the annual plan set? Just now I'm curious.
Yeah. So usually the annual plan is set. Usually it's set within the first month of the year. So it would be, back in May. Sadly, this year we only got it really set partway through June. So again, it's very close to the situation, but it's already sort of been passed by board. So we sort of feel that we'll keep those two separate just for the sake of brevity. When it comes to like what's on the annual plan, it's usually broken down into sort of the operational goals for the year, the advocacy goals for the year, and then also sort of the governance goals for the year. Again, something that not many students will be aware of is that we recently went through a very big governance change over COVID. So beforehand, there was sort of the board of directors, but then there was also like a sitting council of students, which was sort of a broader, anyone can join. But then just with COVID, they started to see that nobody was showing up to those meetings. And so they've sort of changed up and made it so that the board sort of has all the decision-making power. And so that's really what's changed. And then sort of the governance goals for this year to go back and see, what works with the system, what doesn't work, what are things we can improve going forward. And then our operational goals, as I probably stated a little bit earlier, were sort of that re-engagement with students, making sure that we're providing student spaces and the services that they want. And then sort of the advocacy goals that we talked about earlier. I don't know if that answers your question. Or
Thank you. I think a lot of students probably don't know much about the annual plan. I've worked with WUSA for a while, but I wasn't quite sure either. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And I think this is probably getting back to it. It's very confusing for students. Like if they want to get involved with WUSA, this is sort of going back to our earlier conversation, because not only do they have the annual plan, there's also the long range plan, which is every 5 years. And so there's a lot of sort of ongoing things between both of those plans. And then also if they want to get involved with WUSA, like the structure of the organization is broken up in like 3 different documents. One of those is from the 1970s when WUSA was sort of founded as sort of a not-for-profit corporation. The Feds, back when it was called Feds. And then sort of over the years, there's been the bylaws and then also the policies, which is sort of, these papers that if students are wanting to get involved, they sort of have to go through and read. And they're not like impossible to read, but they're very, bureaucratic, legalese oftentimes. And that can make it, very hard for students to connect with WUSA and sort of see that connection. And it sort of creates a barrier to entry for many students.
What would you say your experience with working with WUSA has been like so far?
In the 2 months that I've been working with WUSA, it's been probably very chaotic as sort of we've been dealing with these many different situations as they come up. I was told when I got in the role that there would usually be one. And
I'd say you're in a very unique position because I feel like a lot of things have happened in your 2 months of term.
Yeah, lots has gone down, and hopefully, once we get through this, we can sort of see calmer waters going forward. I can never say that for sure,
You might be jinxing it now.
I might be jinxing it. You know, maybe we'll see an earthquake. You know,
Oh my God.
You know, or something crazy like that. Hopefully not. I'll knock on the table. You
The
know,
headline will say WUSA president wishes for this.
oh yeah, you know, they'll be like, oh, he jinxed us. But yeah, besides, you know, being very busy, obviously we're trying to keep in contact with students, making sure that we're continuing to provide for them and making sure that their voices are heard with regards to this. I invite pretty much any student to come down to my office. I'm free, you know, to chat. You know, even if I have something on my calendar, I can probably block off 5 or 10 minutes to talk with anyone if they have, you know, concerns or if they just want to talk to me.
Where is your office for?
Yes, office is a little bit hidden, but sort of when you're going into the, you know, SLC, we have the big great room, or the gray room as I call it, because it has all those great things. And you have the multi-purpose room. Maybe we'll say it like this. If you're leaving from the lounge, which used to be called the Bomber, and you just go straight. If you go straight, you'll see a set of stairs. If you go up those stairs, our offices are right to the right when you get through those doors.
The alternative version of what Rory just said is, if you're really not sure, you can always go to the turnkey desk and they will show you where it is.
Yes, that might be a good way too, yes.
So yeah, you heard it here first. Rory's available 24/7. So
In his office, he never leaves.
except on Fridays.
I'm free most office hours, except Fridays, yeah.
Yeah, I would have, my office is actually right across from Rory. So when I get in during the morning, I say, "Good morning, Rory," and then I hide myself away in my office. But I'm also available to listen to students, to interact with students. I mainly handle a lot of the advocacy, external outreaching parts of what we do at WUSA. So if it's not in regards to that, I might just forward your email to Rory, but I'm usually really proficient at managing my inbox. So you can usually hear a reply really quickly. And if not, then you can come visit Rory in his office.
Awesome. Yeah, so we've covered a lot of really heavy topics already, and I'd like to hear what your favorite parts of your jobs are. And what would you say is the highlight of being president and vice president?
I think obviously the big highlight's going to be representing students. I think that's sort of always been my driving factor, going back to, as I said, you know, back in high school, was, you know, representing students and also putting on, you know, events and stuff that students want to see. That's probably, you know, continuing to drive me to do it, you know, the best I can at my job here, is, you know, providing for students and making sure that the changes that they want to see, either, you know, internally within Musa, but then also at the university, you know, are, you know, underway, and making sure that those changes take place.
Same point as Rory. I think after maybe 2 years now of dedicating a lot of my time to different volunteer groups on campus, to doing like part-time jobs, having opportunities to work with different campus stakeholders, getting to meet new people, meet new students, see what their needs and desires are and what they really want to do while they're at university and make most of their time here, is something that's really important to me. Adding on to that, though, I think it's really important to grow as a leader and grow as an individual, which is why I was really interested in being a WUSA executive, because I think there's always so much that you can learn in whatever field that you're in. And with planning, since it's so flexible, it's such a great opportunity to also network, meet with new people, and continue ongoing pursuits of supporting students. So,
Were you both interested in student exec roles in high school before coming into Waterloo?
I think Rory's answered that.
I think obviously, yeah. Yeah, when I was in high school, I sort of, again, always was on student council. So obviously in my
What
grade,
roles did you have?
so in my grade 9 year, I was sort of just a grade rep, as that was sort of the only role available, because the elections are in the spring usually. Then in my grade 10 year, I was the treasurer. And then in grade 11 and 12, I was president for both years. So I have, you know, sort of that history to draw upon.
Awesome.
I would say my life really took off in university. So I think COVID really dampened my grade 11 and 12 year, because I'm a year older than Rory. But I would say I became more active on campus in my first year by joining ESS, which is Environment Society, but also joining my program society. And just by being involved on campus, once you start one thing, you'll say, oh, I want to do 2 things. And then that will keep going until you feel absolutely overwhelmed and say, whoa, I need to step back a little bit. But in high school, I was more of a fan of volunteering for charities and being a part of different sports clubs. So, fun fact, this makes me feel special. But I didn't grow up in Canada. I grew up abroad in Singapore before I moved to Canada. So it was also a huge culture shock when I came here. But I used to be a captain of my swim team, and then touch rugby, and then I was the marketing director. It's a charity called the 24-Hour Race, so we focus on modern day slavery. So that's where my leadership role took off in high school. But then again, COVID happened, and then things happened after that. But here I am.
So you grew up in Singapore? Oh, wow. 13 years. That's awesome. Have you been back in Singapore since?
Not yet. I get messages from my friends asking me if I will go back, so maybe one day.
Oh, I've been to Singapore once when I went to Universal Studios. I think I was too small to remember when, but Singapore is really nice. And you were also involved in student council as well, right, Ria?
No, not exactly, no. But we had this thing called the Rotaract Club, and I was the vice president of my Rotaract Club for a year. Basically, you try to raise funds for charity, you try to do social service, and I did enjoy that aspect a lot, especially just being there for people that really need you. And I think I empathize a lot with people in general, so it was a really good experience for sure.
That's awesome. In high school, I was the communications coordinator, which I think is really connected, or it makes sense why I'm here when you think about it. But yeah, that was my experience in it. President, all those roles seem really daunting to me. So it's really cool to see how you guys do it in a university setting, because I haven't really touched much into that area of student council or student body.
Especially because the stakes are so much higher.
Oh, yeah.
Your responsibilities are a lot more, and there are so many people that are depending on you for so much. And I think you both are doing a fantastic job at that. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. You're making me feel nervous. All this expectation on my shoulders now,
We expect so much from you. We're all looking to you. Ria, what are you trying to say?
But no, yeah, I think it's been going, very well so far. Obviously, there's a lot still to be done this year, but, it's very nice to hear that, you think we've been doing a good job, Yeah.
I do, especially because I've been working with WUSA. It's going to be close to a year now. And I see how WUSA really cares about students, and they want to hear about students. What are students going through? What are their concerns? And you want to hear their feedback, and you want to try and create a good environment for students where they feel like coming to university and engaging with their peers and just having fun. And I see that, and I think students deserve that. Every student deserves to just be able to do what they want to do, have fun, and make the most of their time here, because I also feel like once you graduate, this time won't come back.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think oftentimes there's a sense here at Waterloo that academics is everything, and that to the detriment of fun almost. And I think that's something that, just within my friend circle, but then also I'm talking with other students that, you always have to find that balance in life where, you find the time for fun. And that's something that I think, it's important for students to hear.
And I think WUSA does such a good job of covering different aspects of a student's life as well, be it the health and dental plan, be it events, or be it advocacy. I think WUSA as a student association is trying to just impact students' lives holistically. So I really acknowledge that, and I really appreciate that about WUSA.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not going to accept it. As WUSA, I'm accepting it. But yeah, it's very nice to hear that. I think that's something that we strive for as an organization, is to sort of play that role in students' lives and making sure that we're there to support them, no matter where they are or, how they're feeling or what they want to see from us.
Rory always knows how to respond. I'm just kind of yep, that, yeah.
Well, no, I'm kind of interested because you are in your second year. Have you been involved in WUSA before going into this role?
Not necessarily WUSA. The irony is I've worked with a lot of people who work with WUSA.
Oh, okay.
So I've worked with campus housing before. I've worked with food services. I have probably work too much with campus housing now I think about it, but they are a few of the people who really helped me start my life on campus. And I think that's a really big thing to highlight when students do come to campus for the first time, is that there's so many opportunities for them to get engaged and to grow their opportunities on campus as well, and in relation to their academics, because you need that balance. But I also worked with the Student Success Office. I worked with IPC, so the International Peer Community, for a long time. And that was really because I felt more at home in Singapore than I did in Canada. So that's a little bit of the irony as well, where I was born in Canada, but I grew up abroad, but here I am. So maybe I should feel like I belong here. But I actually only really interacted with WUSA at that time in regards to events that were ongoing, looking at updates online, but also attending something in regards to WUSA. So WUSA holds a general assembly with its members where students can get involved and vote on different amendments and the policy writing behind a lot of what WUSA does to advocate for students on the provincial level. So I actually signed up for that through WUSA, through this volunteer application, and then was put into a position where I could attend a General Assembly at Queen's University and have an opportunity to learn about Two-Spirits and LGBTQI plus communities, but also talk on teaching quality and assessment. So it was a learning opportunity that I was invited to. But there's also many jobs and volunteer opportunities that you can take on through WUSA as a student. And we're always looking for more people to get engaged and to be a part of our wonderful services on campus as well. So although I didn't do that, I strongly recommend.
Apply WUSA.
Apply WUSA.
So what got you into the role you're in?
Right now, I guess you could say my main motivations was always just talking to people. I felt as though I had the skill sets necessary to be a great supporting role to the president, who was at WUSA. For example, while being on campus for 2 years, I still have that spirit, that Waterloo spirit, which hasn't been taken away from me by my studies. And I was just always very passionate about finding issues, identifying issues, and advocating for them. And that was my skill set. A lot of the admin background work, but also just developing different resources for students. And since I knew that I had that capacity and that ability to create change and help others, I felt very drawn to the role. But also the idea of creating an impact and bettering students' lives is something that I really enjoy. And also just talking to people face to face, asking them how their day is going. And I can do that through this role. So I'm very content that, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, anyways, so we are actually quite pressed for time. I just want to thank you guys for joining us today and being on our podcast and spending time with us.
It was a wonderful conversation and very informative as well. I learned a lot, and I hope our viewers did too.
Yeah, so thank you so much again.
Thank you guys for having us on. I've been loving the first 2 episodes so far. They've been very good.
Thank you.
So I look forward to listening to this one and then also maybe connecting again in the future. But yeah, it's very
for
nice.
Sure. If you guys just want to hop on another future podcast episode, let us know. We'll record it and we'll put it out for people to listen to.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyways, so thank you so much for listening and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Goodbye.